Our fellow, our city over here.
I was going to say, I don't have to go first, but I do have a question. So going back to your We Create series, and I could go to the website and look this up, but I'm sure that you can actually speak to it. You said that you guys did a We Create corporate engagement video. And I'm really intrigued by that because so many entrepreneurs are, mom and pop or small startups. Whenever you're trying to make the case for entrepreneurship to titans of corporate industry who are so far, managing several million employees, what is that case that you make to them that says why you should care about entrepreneurship when you are way up here and these companies are just getting started?
Sure. So we took a deep look at that, trying to figure out sort of what the ROI is. And what we found was between the smaller business and the larger business, there are 5 strategic exchanges. One of those is just sponsorship, part of being community relations, right, in your community, making sure that the larger company gets its name out there through sponsorship. And we find that the B2C companies are the ones that really would like to do that the most. And so it's going to be your cell phone companies and things like that. The next thing is people, product, and place exchanges. What we found there was that C-level entrepreneurs, or C-level in the corporations, make excellent mentors to the smaller businesses, right? And there are also products that can be exchanged. And if they have space and a small business can actually move into the space, that actually helps. And what is that for the corporation? What corporations want is for everybody to have an entrepreneurial spirit within the corporation. That's what they want. And it's kind of like having a better sense of urgency. It's kind of like saying, I have cycle time, can I take 2 days out of my 7-day cycle time? And they believe that this spirit of entrepreneurs can help them do that. So they want to get closer to that spirit and change their cultures. So we see that. The next piece is customer and vendor sourcing, which is supply chain, right? And the demographics of the U.S. are changing. And their customers, from a customer perspective, they need to understand the cultures and what people want from different cultures, because it's changing. It's just what it is. One of the ways to do that is to actually have a better supplier diversity program, right? To really begin to understand this. And so, and there are 2 ways that people buy. One is through the procurement process, which is very structured and usually larger contracts. And it's a little bit harder to get them to go small, because honestly, if they've got a contract with a big organization, they are going to push that contract as far as they can to get them to do as much as they can. And they have to be, like somebody said, what happens when a small company comes for some of this is that they want a chair, but the small company only has the wheel on the chair, right? So, but there's another whole piece of it, which is what's called either indirects or our purchasing card purchases, right? So trying to change the mindset of the decision makers in the departments themselves to consider buying small, which means, who are you getting to do your catering? Where are you buying your supplies from? There's a lot of ability on the parts of people who own purchasing cards to buy small. And so they're kind of 2 different efforts that can happen. But there's a lot of data out there that says if you buy diverse, you can actually improve your bottom line quite well.
Isn't there a capacity building piece of that too? If the corporation is like, well, here, we're going to give you guys this contract, and if you don't have enough employees or enough resources to make it, then we'll help you build it up to the point that you can get there?
Yeah, there are the people that do the most supplier diversity often have programs, they have portals, they have education, They work with companies to actually build a relationship with the smaller company. And, I mean, part of it is if you don't have the capacity, you're not going to get the,
Right.
but also, how do we do business with you and things like that. The other issue that you have is that the terms of the contracts with the larger companies are very onerous to the smaller company, especially around insurance and things like that. And so there is a need to switch out the terms and conditions a little bit. Not only that, but to get the smaller companies to understand they're negotiable. So there's kind of that as well.
So just following up on that, a couple of examples of corporations that you guys have worked with that you feel are really like supporting entrepreneurship really well. Do you have a top 3?
Yeah, so yes, and we have a very interesting project going on right now.
Great.
Okay, so what we have done is we've created the CEO to CEO Challenge. And CEOs of our larger corporations, 12 of them, have agreed to take the challenge. And there are 8 steps to the challenge. I'm not going to remember all of them. But basically, they've agreed that they're going to increase small and diverse spend in their organizations, that they're going to put the people and resources in place to allow that to happen, that they're going to measure the spend over time and report it, actually in Casey SourceLink article, and that they are going to work within the community to do that. So we have a cohort of 12 that we're starting with, currently working on that, understanding the dynamics. We have about a third of them have never done this before. About a third of them are like Evergy, which is our utilities company, and J.E. Dunn, which is a big contractor firm that have done this for years and do it very well. And then there's about a third that are kind of in the middle. So we've actually asked the CEOs to sign on the dotted line on this challenge. And our goal is to get 12, to go through this with the first 12 to see what happens, and then to have 100 take the challenge by the end of June of next year. So it's becoming a community-wide kind of effort. So we've got that work going on, and a lot of that has to do with the procurement side. And so now we're going to try to figure out how we do the indirect side as well, which causes a need for a mindset shift inside of the larger organizations. But we also are beginning to believe that it's not the biggest corporations that are going to be the best at this. We think it may be that middle level, of which there are many more, that can really actually help this happen because they're closer to the smaller business. So stay tuned on that one.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I know this is going to sound like a really basic question, but can you talk a little bit about how you knew you had a lot of entrepreneurs? I know that sounds crazy, but that's one of the things that we think about a lot here in Fort Worth.
Okay, so originally back in 2003 when I started this, Kaufman had just done a study and said that 6 out of every, what was it? 6 out of every 100 people or something we're taking action to start a business, which translated in Kansas City to 98,000 people. I know the number, I just can't remember the exact stat that got me there. And so when we first started talking about Casey SourceLink, that was the number we were using. And so there's a certain percentage of the population that at any given time is working to move it forward, and that was the data we had at the time, but it's a lot. And so, when you think about 240 resource partners and 98,000 people, you can see that we're nowhere near have the ability to service all the people that are starting in Kansas City.
Let's see if I can talk. So tomorrow, spoiler alert, we're going to announce our second year of essentially the We Create Jobs version in Tarrant County in Fort Worth. And the number has gone way up even since we did it last year. So firms 0 to 1 years old, so the newest of the new companies, are create about 30,000 jobs a year, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
How do we effectively communicate that to not only the policymakers and the city leaders, but just other people in the community? What would you say is the most effective way for us to talk about that?
So, I think the thing is the number's gonna wow people. And they're gonna say, wait, we're in the middle of a recession, we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? And what we know, and we can see it in all of our data, is anytime anytime the unemployment rate goes up, so do the number of people who start jobs, right? So it doesn't surprise me at all that it went up this year. The other thing is that it's kind of an innovator's dream right now, right? I mean, all you need is a problem. Has anybody not got a problem today, right? You know, and so that's so you're going to see a lot of entrepreneurship right now, and I think just the number blows people away. I mean, we used to just drop the number. 8% of your workforce in the last 5 years was created by this, right? Yeah.
So can I add on to his question?
Sure.
Because I have seen and developed data like that I think is pretty much like drop the microphone data. So my question is less how do we communicate it and more what should we expect or demand as the response should be to that data once it's presented? Because in my situation, we walked in and we showed the data and stepped back and they were like, this is cool.
Now what?
Yeah, go away. So how do you take that amazing data and make it
do something?
Right.
Right. So, okay, if you want to talk policy for a minute, did you know the first incentive for attracting a business came out in 1927? Okay, so 100 years we've been creating incentives for attracting businesses. We're pretty darn good at it, right? And it's a lot in tax, it's in TIF, it's in, you name it. Nobody knows how to create incentives for entrepreneurs, right? Because a lot of the early stage stuff, they're not paying a lot of taxes, so the tax thing, doesn't help. The best that you can do is create pools of capital and create technical assistance that can help them grow. So I think the part of the problem is nobody's found the incentive yet, right? And maybe there's a percentage of tax that the city takes that you could reduce, that kind of thing. But when I say, but you're attracting people, and the other thing is economic development has traditionally been property development. And so our economic developers know property development, right? They don't understand this creation side of it. So anyway, we just wrote a credential for IDC to try to fix that. But the thing is that, well, you're attracting companies to my community and you're reducing the tax on them. Yeah, but that doesn't count. Well, why not? Well, because we're just not going to get that tax. To which I say, well, what if you attracted the companies and gave them less of a tax break and took that money and put it into developing small businesses, right? So a lot of it, I think, has to do with understanding and priorities. The other thing is, when you look at a city, a lot of their income, their discretionary income, typically comes from sales tax, right? And there's really, when you look at cities, there's not a lot of discretionary. And so trying to layer on the jobs or the businesses, the amount of sales tax that's coming in from those smaller businesses and trying to get it, into that space as well. So, but I think part of the problem is we've been doing attraction for 100 years and we have not been doing creation. Cobham's done a nice job on through its startup plan, and it really lists some nice policies that could assist with this. But I mean, you need things that are gonna help people invest, help the private sector invest. A lot of our issues is that there isn't any mechanism for Valley of Death funding, and it doesn't matter what kind of business you are, whether you're a tech business or another business. It's just very hard to get capital in those very early stages. I think public funding for that could really help, and it's not a lot, at those really early stages before the capital market picks up and goes in. I mean, I think there's just some different things that we could look at. And then also making sure your city is taking advantage of everything that's out there, like CDFIs right now, can be a massive support to small businesses through microlending. And a lot of our CDFIs are just not taking advantage of it, and there's a lot of money out there right now for that. So, there's an area. The other thing that we hear from our entrepreneurs everywhere is that the biggest challenge they have is getting licensed through the city. And the inspector comes and says, the inspector comes and says, well, you put that counter in, but it's 3 inches too big, so I can't give you your occupancy license because your counter is 3 inches too big. So somehow we're not getting to the entrepreneurs, especially the retail restaurants, the right information so that they can open easily. So it's not just always about the money and the technical assistance from a city's perspective. And so, I often say, from a city perspective, work on what you can control, right? You can control who you buy from. You can control what your inspectors are doing. Those are things that we know need to be supported right now as well. So, and then getting into some of these other things too.
No, I did want to jump in with a follow-up, and I'm putting on my government hat, because you're talking about having capital available to help entrepreneurs, whether through incentives or something else. I can't remember the exact percent, but a fair amount of entrepreneurial startups fail within the first 5 years. It is really hard for the government to sit back and say, well, we want to make a strategic, pretty confident investment in this and make sure that we see returns on that investment. And I think that's a problem that we've been having locally is, we need to start getting more capital into this space, but people want to see a guarantee on their investment somehow, some way. And of course, there are no guarantees.
Right.
And so what is your take or response to attitudes like that?
Yeah, no, I think that, I think you have to decide, kind of what you want to invest in, right? And it's not so much that the city has to put capital directly into a company, it's that the city could maybe incent others to do it. So it's not your decision, it's their decision. Angel tax credits, for instance, are things that states use to incent private investment. They're not making the decision as to who gets the money. They're just supporting the investor in actually, kind of making that happen. Again, you have to work with what you can control. And I think a lot of times people go, oh, the city should just do all of this, but you've got to work with what you can control. Yeah,
So you should do all of this, pay for everything.
That's right, yeah. And so I think it's looking at those kinds of things, and then the city plays a big role in safety, sidewalks, there's a lot that goes on that makes companies successful that people don't really think about. So, but it could be that you look at a city block and say, we're going to make sure that there's entrepreneurial resources on this block, kind of thing, because we do that for restaurants. So I don't know if that helps, but
No, it does. It's just
it's
it is a
difficult
mentality, and so I'm the marketing team for economic development. So being able to have some sort of response to those questions is interesting to me.
Yeah. No, it's like I said, economic development has been property development for a long time, and so trying to understand creation and really talking about economic development as a three-pronged: attraction, retention, and creation is important. And there's it's surprisingly not as many people fail in 5 years as one would believe. And what we're seeing in our jobs data is that even though businesses are failing, other businesses are picking up those jobs. So we're not seeing a drop in jobs in our jobs data because people go out of business. So you can, and you guys have jobs data too, so you can maybe take a look at that. So it looks very much like our small businesses are absorbing those jobs as they create them, so as they fall off. So we're just not seeing a lot of fall off in that. And we would if what you said was true. And it is a myth, and the SBA has some great information on it, and it's like only, it's a smaller amount that fail in 5 years than you realize. You're also being promised that businesses are bringing 300 jobs, and I don't know how often they bring in the 300 jobs. And so that's the other side of that conversation as well.
Well,
It's a promise of jobs.
yes, the ones that we incentivize, we double check to make sure that they do.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
everyone else, we can't hold them accountable for that.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Sure.
I encourage if anybody has questions, so please reach out to Maria. Her link is on the website, or I mean, obviously she's very open to share the secrets of Kansas City with us. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out.